One of the most common fears that people have right now, today, in 2024, is not being able to maintain with the rising cost of living and the extreme challenges that they face each and every day when it comes to money. And in 2024, we already know that there's going to be a large number of job cuts, terminations, and layoffs already planned, already announced. These are tied to elimination of middle management. These are tied to a redundancy in workforce. These are tied to companies and businesses defaulting on their lease contracts and no longer wanting to pay rent for the office buildings that they had, but also having to relinquish the workforce, i.e. terminate, fire, layoff thousands of people. It's happening across the board. Pharmacists are being cut, and not just Walmart, but also in CVS inside of Target. And we're seeing folks in the banking industry being laid off, which surprisingly enough, Bank of America finally announced layoffs, where if you remember last year, Bank of America CEO Brian Moynihan said that he wasn't going to lay anybody off. Excuse me. Yeah, he said he wasn't going to lay anybody off. And apparently that wasn't necessarily true. That wasn't the case. But the worst part about it all is coming across someone who reaches out and says, hey, for instance, Kevin, I just lost my job. I just got laid off. I was just fired with no notice, basically. Maybe there's a severance. Maybe there's something to help you along in this time. Perhaps unemployment could be of assistance here, but odds are you're probably going to need to hit the ground running and get back to work as quickly as possible. Excuse me. So no worse than, for instance, someone saying, I just lost my job, but I also just bought a new house, or I just got a mortgage. I just took out a loan to send my kid to college, or whatever it may be. Whatever it may be. Whatever it may be is adding on to the weight and the burden, the strife, the anxiety, the worry, the panic, the fear, not to mention the latest from CNBC, Make It. Nearly half of Americans have less than $500 in savings. Nearly half have less than $500. How much money Americans have in their savings accounts? Nearly half have less than $500. Now, this is worrisome, but that $500 is going to disappear so quickly, so rapidly, with rising prices, escalating cost of living, inflation, surprise expenses, you name it. And with credit card interest rates going up, then the minimum payments are going up, and that money's going to be wiped out and depleted faster than ever. And then you're going to have to make a choice of, do I pay the minimum on my credit card, or do I let my credit card go into derogatory collection and default and charge-off status, pushing you towards a path of further financial destruction and bankruptcy, possibly. But unfortunately, the sad part about it is that it says nearly half of Americans have $500 or less in their savings accounts, an amount that leaves them vulnerable to unexpected expenses. And this is about 29% of respondents have about $501 between $501 and $5,000 in their savings accounts, while the remaining 21% of Americans have $5,001 or more. But the worst part, I think, about this share here is it then goes into explanation of why an emergency fund is important, which obviously I think that kind of goes without saying. And then it says where to stash your emergency fund and to put it in a high yield savings account. But maybe CNBC needs to get the memo, because I think what people need now, and at least what people want now, is not an explanation of why an emergency fund is so important. I think that kind of goes without saying. Excuse me. That kind of goes without saying. We know we need an emergency fund. Shit has hit the fan, and we need that emergency fund, but we don't have it. Because as you said, nearly half of Americans have less than $500 in savings. And if you lose your job, if you're laid off, terminated, fired with no notice, tomorrow, today, yesterday, whenever, perhaps maybe it has happened, let me know in the comments, and you have less than $500 in savings, then what are we supposed to do next? And then telling folks to stash your emergency fund in a high yield savings account is great if you had one, but if you don't, really and truly, why are we not seeing more of these articles saying how much money Americans have in their savings accounts? Nearly half have less than $500. Here's how to increase that. Here's how to boost that number up. Here's how to save more. Here's how to build an emergency fund. Because right now, all I'm hearing is jobs are being cut, people are being laid off, folks are being fired, and Americans don't have any money. Americans don't have any money. Another headline I read was, the shopping spree is over. Okay. Are we just pouring salt in the wounds here, or are we just poking fun and laughing and snickering at folks who have tried their hardest, tried their damnedest, but eventually have become victims of this cycle that is being, this is a cycle, this is an economic cycle, and we are now coming back around to the point of which, again, the great wealth transfer, greatest wealth transfer ever. And you'll be distracted by discussions and conversations about, was it a recession? Is it a recession? Are we going to be in a recession? Soft landing, hard landing, no landing, all these different phrases and catchphrases and terms and trending headline keywords and clickbait. Excuse me. But they're going to do all that to distract you while telling you you don't have $500. I was going to say half $1,000. That's kind of weird. You're going to say you don't have $500 in your savings account. So they're going to distract you with terminology that's just fluff and noise about the economy. Then they're going to distract you by reminding you that you don't have money in savings. Perhaps, maybe, if you are of the nearly half that have less than $500. I don't know. Maybe not. Hopefully not. Excuse me. And then, I should really get some water or something. And then not tell you what to do next. Remind you that the company you work for could probably be laying you off. Thousands of layoffs have been planned and prepared for notification. And also, stores are closing up, down, left, and right. Everywhere I look and turn, there's an announcement, there's a headline, there's a video, there's something going on about stores closing, okay? And at the end of the day, I've yet to find anything here that's talking about a possible solution to the problem. Have you? I saw one, and I don't think it was a solution. It was talking about how folks are using cash transfers, balance transfers, cash advance on their credit cards to pay their rent. Now, I don't know about you guys, but that doesn't seem like a viable solution to me. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just looking in the wrong place. If you guys have come across anything that could be of any assistance, any help, let me know. Share it with me. All my info is in the description. And if you quite possibly have fallen onto hard times due to no fault of your own, laid off, fired, terminated, furloughed, hours cut, pay reduction, let me know. please, let's talk about it. Let's try to formulate a solution, especially if you just bought a house or you just signed a lease or you're financing a new car or whatever it may be. And I think next I'll share with you guys the latest on this PIP. That's a big one. The performance improvement plan. They got people working harder to get fired. Okay. And if you hear PIP or if you hear performance improvement plan, then you need to run. You need to run.